So today I'm going to show you an experiment that I've been working on. I am going to do a needle punch kit of my own using Photoshop and then Cricut. I'm going to try to use the sublimation markers to draw an outline that I can then iron on to the monk cloth. So here I'm doing a separation of all the colors. I drew over a flower that I took a picture of so that I had more of like what the natural look would be on a needle point, sort of that look, you know, that a little bit more realistic, a few less colors, and a little bit more blobby texture, so that you can sort of fill it in and create more of shadow and illusion, but not too detailed to make it complicated. So I did have a bit of a fight with Cricut. He kept trying to separate all the layers, which was making it really difficult. And every time I tried to correct it, it would have an error message. I don't know if other people have had this issue with trying to use the pens in multiple layers, but it had some issues. So this is what happened. It actually bled through and permanently stained the mat underneath. So this is what I came up with at the end. I went back and just did it as a black outline, just a single black outline, used the sublimation marker on laser paper, and now I'm just tracing over it to make sure it's defined. And here I'm using a green over the black that I already had it printed with. When I printed it this way, it took a minute. The other one was almost an hour and just made a blob. So obviously Cricut prefers single line drawings with the sublimation markers. So I'm just going to do it as a coloring at the moment. So these are all the colors that I've selected to give it a gradient. And I'm just going to go through and color as closely as the original was going to be. And yeah, so I am just going to sit here and color. Obviously it won't be exactly the same as the original artwork, but you know, it'll be close and you'll get the idea. And again, this is just a trial to see if I can do this and how it'll all pan out at the end. Hopefully well. Fortunately, I enjoy coloring, so this isn't so bad, but definitely, if it's not your thing, this might be a bit tedious. You may just try to, do the main lines, not do the full coloring in, because it's not totally necessary. It's just more of a, if you're more of a visual artist, or if you're more of a, follow the numbers. If you follow the numbers, you could probably just line it up yourself with the outline. But I like having the colors there myself. And just so you know, I know on the Cricut page, they tell you that the sublimation doesn't work on products that aren't theirs. But from what I've read online and what I've gathered from other people, is it does. It may not work as well. The pigment may not be as vibrant. But if you're just doing something like this where it's a stencil and you're looking for the outline, it's supposed to work. So I'm really hopeful this all works out. We'll see what the colors transfer like. That's why I wanted to use a large selection of colors as well, is to really see if there is a gradient. Because a lot of these markers, when you're coloring with them, seem to almost be the same color, but the markers on the outside aren't. So it should be interesting to see what happens. And the paper that I'm using is HP Multi-Purpose with Color Lock, which from everything that I've read can be used as laser paper or as inkjet paper. And the Color Lock is what's supposed to actually work for the sublimation. And it is less expensive than a lot of the sublimation paper. So if it does pan out, that would be really cool. Just wanted to share that. So we will see at the end if it all works out. So the bubblegum pink is really, really light. Barely even see it at all. Anyway, so I'm going to cut it as close to the size as I can, giving myself just a little bit of room. And I have the monk cloth, which is a little bit of a wider weave. And this is a rayon cotton blend, which if you read Cricut's site, it's not supposed to work whatsoever. So here's the experiment, but this is what you can get at Michael's or one of the craft stores relatively easily if you want to actually do the project. So turn it upside down, and I put an ironing pad underneath. I'm turning it up to cotton, or 400. Normally you're supposed to put the heat tape on. I totally forgot about that. Also, I have a non-stick sheet that I put over as well. There you go. Teflon sheet, that's the word I was looking for. It says not to do what I just did, so I'm going to try and keep it on there a little longer. You're supposed to just sort of plant it and not move it so much, but the shape of it is a little bit different than my iron, and I don't have one of those snazzy heat presses, so we'll make do with this. Hopefully it does transfer. So I'm just going to give it a good 60 seconds. I definitely recommend those Teflon sheets though. They're great for everything. So again, in the perfect world, I would have used some of that heat-proof tape that you get from Cricut to hold it down so that I could check it twice and do it properly, but completely forgot it was on my table. And once you've picked it up, you're kind of committed. Here we go. So that's what came out on the fabric that it isn't supposed to work on, which I think it came out pretty well, all things considered. So now I'm just going to do what you would normally do to do either a needle point or a punch needle, which is what I'm going to be doing. So just set it up on the ring. Make sure it's as taut as you can get it. The one thing about buying one cloth like this is when you cut it, it starts to pull apart really quickly. So make sure to tape your edges or sew them once you've cut it. And make sure to give yourself enough of a border. That is one of the more dangerous ones, is if you don't give enough border, you'll end up with some issues. You know, trying to make it taut midway through the project when it gets a little looser, it really frays easily if you don't have that little extra overhang. And obviously I don't know what I'm doing with it once I've done, so it's good to have a little extra if you want to make it into a pillow or into an applique or whatever project you're actually going to use it for afterwards, or just as a display piece. And definitely I would have gone a little longer with the heat had I had the tape on, just to give it a little bit more pigment, but I think all in all it came out pretty well. And here I'm just using packaging tape. I find that holds on really well. Scotch tape never seems to stick very well, and all the other ones leave a pretty big mark on it. And one edge is pre-sewn when you purchase it, so you don't have to tape that edge, obviously. And here I'm just tightening up the drum on it. I'm usually pretty finicky about it because you really do want as good a resistance as you can get. So now I'm just going to go through showing you pictures of the progress. So these were the colors that I used. And I realized midway through that I didn't have dark enough colors, but I had already gone too far. So the outcome didn't come out quite the way I had hoped. The next one I do, I will obviously change those colors. And my needle actually broke midway through as well, so the depth was a little different. So there was a few oopsie doopsies, but all in all, I think for my first experiment, it came out really well. And it's pretty neat to know that you can use the Cricut machine to actually do something like this. However, I probably wouldn't need all the sublimation markers. Maybe a couple colors just to give a separation of color, but I don't think you really need all of them, as you can see. Well, hopefully you really enjoyed watching this. Hopeful that it was, insightful in some way, or that it'll inspire you to make a lovely new project of your own, or to use your machine differently. And yeah, thanks again for watching. And here you can sort of see it now, where my color range was not quite right. I liked them all together in the store. And let me know what you think. So you can see where it should have been that dark green, right? Anyway, have a great day, everyone.